You're listening to Witch Wednesdays, your weekly podcast source for all things witchcraft in the modern world. Welcome back to Witch Wednesdays. I'm Steph, and I have a guest here with me today who is also the host of a podcast. So I am going to go ahead and let her introduce herself and let you know where you can find her online.
Hello. My name is Charlene, and I host Witchy Work Wishes. And you can find me online. Really, just search for anything that says Witchy Work Wishes. That's I've condensed it all into that sequence.
Perfect. And listeners, as always, everything will be linked over at witchwednesdays.com in the show notes so you can find it easily. But you recently started end of last year. That's exciting.
Yeah, I did.
Well, I would love to really let you tell the listeners what your podcast is about and why you were inspired to start it, because I know that came from a lack of finding the proper resources.
It actually did. So my journey, to begin with with the witchcraft practice, has been a bit sporadic. I can say I've had things happen when I was really, really little, like under 5 years old, that I have experienced and that have come, in and out of my life since then. But as far as really embracing the witchcraft community, I would say that's been in the last 4 or 5 years. As most people will say, a traumatic experience is what started the true dive in for me. And if people are listening to my podcast, I do start off with a little personal stuff every time for each episode. But the traumatic event was unfortunately getting attacked, and without getting into too many details, I was actually attached because the person thought I was a witch. So that one really rocked my world. I tried going to therapy, but my therapy really ended up being diving into the witchcraft world and kind of embracing who I think I've already always known who I was, but starting to record stuff. And I'm so business oriented that I really wanted to find a way. I have my home set up really well and some practices going smoothly there. But I really wanted to bring stuff into my office inconspicuously, but still bring it into my office so that I could start having more of a balance in my own personal life. Again, a balance between home and work, but a balance nonetheless with the witchcraft practice.
I think those are all incredibly interesting topics to cover. I know that people want to include their witchcraft more and do it in an inconspicuous way because they are afraid of things like that happening, because they still do. And
it still does.
We are sort of in this age where we are used to being a part of this community, and we think that doesn't happen anymore. And I think some of us that are like myself that are in more progressive liberal cities were like, no, that who cares if you're exactly. a witch? Like, nobody really cares. That's not real. But that is not true in a lot of places.
Yeah. And it was with somebody I'm very close to. So there's a whole nother separate, healing process that needs to happen with that. They were under the influence of drugs, so that it wasn't like somebody in their right mind, coming at me. So I want to make sure listeners know that it wasn't somebody just randomly off the street saying, "Oh my gosh, I think you're a witch." It was, somebody that was in an altered state of mind and was really, really confused and struggling at the time.
My favorite part of that story, though, is the fact that you, instead of shying away, were like, yes, I'm going to be even more of a witch now. You know what? That takes huge bravery and growth. And
Thank you. It does. It was interesting. I think I posted something on your Patreon account or not Patreon, one of your accounts that it was almost like coming home when I really started diving into it more and more. I've never, flat out called myself a witch, but boy, once I started looking into stuff, and I was like, well, gosh, I've been doing that forever. Or I've always done it this way. I've always done that. And oh, that's what that means. That was so comforting. And especially in a time where I really needed that comfort, it worked out perfectly for me.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think people don't realize how much everybody is a witch. And like, so many people do witchcraft. And I'm like, well, you're a witch too. What to tell you.
That's so true. And for the work stuff though, what's important for me, and it might not be for everybody else, certainly if there's a practicing witch and their job or career is also in that industry or that field, they have a apothecary store or, something that is, tied to it, there's nothing you need to hide. But honestly, even if I wasn't still, in the broom closet, I don't think I would have a real witchy office. And I'm a business owner, just so everybody knows. I own a bookkeeping and payroll company out in the United States, out in California. And I mean, even if I was out, I still wouldn't have my office real witchy. Case in point, I wouldn't want to go into a CPA's office and have it be real Catholic stuff everywhere or Christian stuff. I'm like, I feel like that's such a personal journey either way. And so while I do, my podcast is definitely tied towards, inconspicuous ways to bring your witchy stuff into your work. I think I would do it either way.
And I think that's true for a lot of people because it is such a personal journey and you don't necessarily want to share everything. And because there's not that many people who are willing to put that stuff out in the workplace, you're going to get a lot if you do.
Oh my gosh, for sure. For sure. But there's a lot of things that, I think what my podcast really has done too, it's almost like I'm just verbalizing my journal. So people are on this journey, if they're listening to it with me, of, the stuff that's inspiring me to research. But so much of it has really and ties directly into our general stuff in today's modern world, Easter and Ostara, right? Like there's just so many things that you can put out for decorations, at least, that while we might know have a different, more pagan beginning, they, anybody walking into your office is gonna be like, oh, it's Easter decorations, or they're gonna think it's Christmas decorations, or we know it's Yule, or what I mean? Everything's so tied together.
It is. That's probably my two favorite ones. every single pagan, every single tradition that like Christians have for those two holidays, it's pagan in background. And I think my husband is Catholic, and every year, those 2 times a year, we have that discussion. I'm like, what does a bunny and eggs have to do with Jesus? Like,
well, let me tell you where it comes from.
Yes, but let me tell you the entire history. He's like, if I have one more history lesson about the Christmas tree, I'm going to wring your neck. I'm like, yes, we're going to do it anyway. Sit down.
That's where you look at me. You're like, did you want to talk about this or no? How much details do you want?
We are talking about it anyway. I think last year I got a Yule log. And he's familiar with the concept. I was like, would you like to hear about the entire history of Yule log? He's like, absolutely. Not even whatsoever.
But please no.
But that's so true, though, that all of those decorations can be used and nobody is going to be any the wiser.
You can interchange them, and what it means to you, and when you're bringing either a spell in or whatever the intentions. I do a lot of kitchen witchcraft for baking for my employees, and that's super important to me. And I always try to add words of love and encouragement. And when I bring the muffins or cookies or whatever it is I made over the weekend, and on Monday, it just looks like I baked for everybody, but I know what it means. I know the energy I put into that cooking and baking.
That's a beautiful way to do that as well.
Yeah.
Everybody loves free food.
Right? Oh my gosh. And you can tie a lot of food into, the seasons and stuff. And certainly there's a couple themes I have, in my podcast so far, but one of them is the days of the week. And that was important for me to really understand, Monday, Moon Day, the whole sequence. And my podcast airs on Wednesdays. I think yours does too. Obviously your name, which Wednesdays, but that's a communication day. And even just, looking back and reading stuff on these specific days of the week and the energy it brings and the colors and stones and crystals you can use with it. If you go back in your life, you're like, oh, that's why that happened every Tuesday. Damn it. Or that's why that happened now I know, like there's a recurring theme every week of very specific energy.
There absolutely is. My season 1 co-host and I always talk, literally we text every Tuesday about how much we hate Tuesdays because it's war energy. It's like Mars Day. And it's battles all day on Tuesdays. It's constant emails, constant phone calls, meetings. Like everybody has problems on Tuesdays. I'm like, why? But we know, like if the day is starting, it is a Tuesday.
It is so true. And I always try, I don't necessarily always do my, clothes or my stones or something. Monday, moon day, I'm very tied to the moon. So Mondays, I'm almost always in like grays or, those type of colors and wear my moonstone. Tuesdays, honestly, I try to wear red or some type of that fire. All right, let's go. It's going to be on today, that battle type gear into the office.
I love it. Do you have a particular place if somebody were going to start and they're like kind of considering bringing some, more low key items or ideas into their workplace? Do you have a good place for them to start? Is it days of the week or is it something else?
I think certainly days of the week is an amazing place to start. The other thing that I am just finishing up, I've got one more to do, is the elements. I'm just wrapping up with Earth right now. All of that stuff ties in, and there's so much easy stuff, just plants, right? I mean, honestly, greenery, and that one breaks up the cold corporate harsh look of an office, or that it can have. You sometimes, I know people can plant or dispose of spells in dirt that is working with the earth. But even if you have a little tiny plant at your desk, that works well. I did one podcast on a shopkeeper's bell, which I personally have at the office. And bells are certainly very symbolic in the witchcraft community, but it doesn't bring a lot of alarms to anybody if they're walking in your door and there's a shopkeeper's bell that rings every time the door opens. So but for actual desk, I would definitely say plants. Not a lot of offices can have candles, but you can have the fake candles, the battery candles. There's a lot of things that can be symbolic that maybe aren't what you would have at your home, but they work, for your desk.
It's kind of similar to a dorm room that has restrictions, like no flames, no scented stuff, but kids get around that by having the flameless candle. I love battery candles. Yeah, I can have as many flames as I want here, and I still love battery candles.
I love it. Incense, you can definitely use some of the oils. You can anoint stuff. There's a lot of ways you can get around with stuff. Most offices have an air freshener, so you can make your own with using special oils and that are going to draw from whatever energy you want to bring into your office.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to enchant the water cooler.
Awesome.
Everybody was going to it, 12 times a day. We're not in the office anymore, so I don't do that. But everybody was back and forth, like filling water like 12 times a day. So I was like, okay, we're doing this for like happy, peaceful energy every time somebody comes and refills their water here. But it worked, I tell you.
I love that. That is a great place to put some specific energy and cleanse it and do do whatever you have to do so everybody can benefit from it.
Yeah, and they don't have to know that they're benefiting. They're just having a better day. You're welcome.
You can thank me later.
You can thank me later for your positive day, unless it's a Tuesday and then I can't help you.
I know. I definitely try to do some things, as far as being organized and making lists and sharing those type of work habits with my employees. But we're all pretty used to. I have a diffuser in the front office, kind of like that, entryway area, and that certainly changed with all of our moods. I have a whole bunch of different oils, and the girls can put whatever they want in there. But there's a lot of different ways that you can do stuff. I would definitely say for somebody starting off, though, plants is the easiest one. I actually have feathers. Crows are super, super important to me. So I'll have feathers either in my desk drawer. Now, again, your personal space is not completely your personal space at the office, right? I mean, it really is the owner's or the company's space. So be mindful, could somebody go in and open up your desk drawer? Yeah, they could.
Right.
But, a feather, people are okay with feathers. They're not gonna be like, oh my gosh, why do you have a crow feather at your desk?
Although I do have to say, to I don't know what states this is applicable in, but we have weird rules here in Illinois about feathers and like having feathers and collecting feathers and keeping them. And I don't know if that's because they're afraid of like bird diseases, like being transported. So just be careful of that and like check your laws in your local area, because that's one that they're like very particular about in Illinois for some reason.
For sure. There are a lot of birds that are protected too. So that's something to watch out for.
I know we have what's so I don't know which ones we have here, but I think crows
Yeah.
and ravens are by area, right? It's like what sort of area in the states that you live in, which one you have. Is that right?
Not necessarily by state, but certainly like more coastal. Oh, we can hear one right now.
I was
More
just
coastal.
going to say the timing of that was amazing.
I'm telling you, I don't know what my thing is with crows, but I really need to. That needs to be next. I'm gonna put it
Wow.
off.
That was beautiful. You could not have timed that better.
Honestly. Oh my gosh. I know for my specific area, crows are smaller, right? And they're going to be more on like sea level type. That's not even right. I can't even say that. Your ravens are definitely up in the mountains. So if go from the ocean level in California up to the Sierra Mountains, you're not going to not have crows up there, but all of a sudden you're gonna be like, the first time I saw it, I was like, what? These guys are huge. What are they possibly eating? I was like, oh no, no, no. These are ravens. So I think every area could have both, but altitude, I don't want to say something wrong. Honestly, I'm not sure.
I think that's interesting. I mean, that makes sense because I think we have crows here and we're obviously very
Mhm.
flat.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. I know Chicago. I lived in Chicago for a bit. I don't remember seeing ravens in Chicago. So I think Chicago is pretty much a lot of crows.
Yeah, I think so. I've seen a few around here, but yeah, I don't know if
Yeah,
I've ever seen a raven in person.
they're big. As soon as you go, either you think that's a really huge, massive crow, but it draws your eye right to it. You're like, what? Who are you? Why are you so big?
Okay, then I have not seen one. That
Yeah,
I haven't had that thought about one. I'm like, oh,
you
crow.
would know. Love it.
Do you have anything that you do, at the office or not,
Mm-hmm.
sort of regularly in your witchcraft practice? I always hesitate to say daily because no 2 days are alike, but
Oh my
anything that
gosh.
you do on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and there are no 2 days. And I definitely have ebbs and flows where I'm like gung ho and this is it. I'm all in. And then I kind of take a little bit of a break and
Yes.
daily, we all do, right? Daily, I would definitely say my coffee. I am an avid coffee drinker. I drink tea in the afternoon, but I absolutely wake up and have my coffee first. And I make it the night before. I grind my beans, and each spoonful that I put into the coffee maker, I say something. I'll say, I love myself. I love my boys. I love my family. I love my business. And then either, so may it be with one more spoonful of coffee that's going to really tip everybody off on how many cups I drink, or or I'll do a teaspoon of cinnamon. So I can say that absolutely happens every single night, and I press the button so it starts automatically, and I've got a full pot when I wake up in the morning. That without doubt that happens every single night. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, as far as practice stuff, I did get a Crow tarot deck, which oh my goodness, I'm totally obsessed with. And I've only done three card pulls on it, but that type of stuff. And I do have an animal like oracle deck. And that stuff I typically do on the weekends. I work over 40 hours. It's not like your typical Monday through Friday. I am a business owner, so it's you do what you got to do. However many hours you need to put in, you put in. So a lot of my more in-depth practice stuff or candle magic, I love fire magic. So in the wintertime when I can have my fireplace or hearth workings, that is more weekend type stuff. But I definitely light a candle every night. There's little things. Do I say something every time I light a candle? No. But that environment and that feeling is there, and that helps a lot. I also have a space on my vanity, like a little like table and mirror set. So when I get ready, there's things there that remind me the card I pulled over the weekend. I have that sitting up, so I can look at it every morning and remind myself what direction I should be following for the week. Do you always follow it? You don't know. But yeah, so the coffee for sure. Candles again, maybe without specific candle magic, but I definitely have that feeling and that energy that is created in my home.
And nothing in that list is too complicated.
No,
All
it
simple.
really
I like
isn't.
that. I love
I'm
some.
really tied to the moon stuff. So I will do, I mean, again, when the new moon happens and the full moon, it is what it is. It's whatever day that falls on. So or I will have to do, midweek stuff if it happens to be something I'm feeling or, I really geared up for. This last week. Again, I'm not sure when they're going to post this, but last week was Ostara. It was the spring equinox. We had a new moon. It was a lot of energy last week. So I did midweek, do some stuff.
That's it. It is harder to do stuff midweek. I completely understand that.
It really is. It really is.
I know. I don't do something for every moon cycle or moon phase. And if it's midweek, it's much smaller every time.
It has to be. There's only so many hours in the day and you got to balance everything out. And it's really, really hard to balance everything out.
It is. And I mean, I do enjoy when certain ones will fall on a weekend. I'm like, yes, now I can like spend time doing it. But I still feel like I need to like write that down and like prepare for it. I need to know that it's coming. I can't do anything last minute.
I can't either. And I'm such a list maker and I like the act of crossing things off my list, everything that goes with list making and goals. But I
A
always
true business owner.
what I do, one of the guests that I had on my podcast, I pulled up like my sheet of, I'm sure like you do too, you have your dates ahead of you of, every Wednesday and what you're going to be doing. And she joked around and she looked at it. She's like, you should do a podcast on how to say you're a witchy business owner without saying you're a witchy business owner. And like, pull up this to-do list and this spreadsheet. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is so you, Charlene.
Oh, I love it.
But no, for planning for stuff, especially if it's midweek, I always make lists and kind of make sure I have everything I need to be ready for.
I like that. And
Yeah,
I am a complete list maker as well. So I hear you.
it's satisfying.
But list making is one of those things that you can make magical too. You can have your crystals and your candles around you and change your list to get stuff done and be productive. I do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely feel like whatever environment you create, even if you're not putting, you're not saying a poem 3 times or, you don't have to have it too complex to create the environment. And for me, definitely it's lighting candles. Once that happens and I start creating that space, I get into the zone. And I love music. I like playing, YouTube has so many great channels of Celtic music or, Ragnar Lothbrok, the Viking music or something on there that will get you in the mood or, something to meditate to, which I'm not good at. I shouldn't even have said that word. Another one on my goal list is meditate. I promise by the end of the year, I'm going to have some like success with it.
It's not for everybody. I do hear a lot of people say that, like, I can't meditate, but you know what? First of all, it's not for everybody. And second of all,
yeah,
even doing it for 5 minutes is technically still meditating. There's no time frame on it. So,
and I think that's part, I'm glad you said it that way. That has to do a little bit with my theme for this year and finding balance. I'm trying to be nicer to myself and just like that, like, okay, let's do 5 minutes and 5 minutes is okay. And it doesn't have to be this huge elaborate thing every single time. And we'll get there. Whatever it's supposed to be, we'll get there when it's supposed to be.
That's a good lesson. I think every one of us needs that lesson of being nicer to ourselves because it's very difficult when you are online so much. And
Yes.
there's so much witchcraft stuff out there. Like I am not doing anything right.
I know, but you know what? That works for them, and so we need to find what works for us.
Absolutely. I guess that goes along with another question that I always ask is, do you have any advice for people listening that are either starting out on their path or are looking to grow their practice this year?
The way I started was a pretty organic way in that I just went with what interested me the most at the time. And now I can say, after, and again, I've been documenting it with certainly the podcast, but, as I read more, as I get more in depth to certain topics, I'm just finding that it really does connect back to everything else. Like everything in our community is so connected, whether you are really interested in the days of the week and that energy. And then all of a sudden you jump over, to the elements maybe. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute. That right. That element was there on Tuesday, or that was an element. Like all of a sudden it all starts coming together. So I would say start with what interests you, and that will give you the energy, and you'll have your personal path of discovery on that. But then it's just so fun to see as you jump into the next subject. Oh wait, there's a little part of that I just learned about back here, and it just all comes together. It's all full circle.
That's great advice, and I enjoy that too, because I think it's so easy with like how many things there are to learn and certain ways to do things that it is easy to forget about the fun.
Yeah,
and it should just be a good time.
Yeah, and there might be some stuff that really you should be doing, as far as protecting yourself and creating that safe, clean space. But I would say go with what interests you the most, and then at some point, as you keep diving in, it's all going to come together. So start with what brings you joy.
Excellent advice for anyone, beginner or not. I think that's excellent advice too. Focus a little more on the joy.
Right? Yeah. I started with just the base. I think the first books I got was a set of the it was like the House Witch, the Green Witch, and like a witch's self-care book maybe or something. It was like a set of 3. And that's honestly what I started with. I just started reading. I started with the Green Witch and the House Witch. I love being like kind of a hearth witch and kitchen witch. So those interested me the most, and that's just where I started. And then the book I got that I probably have referenced the most is like a moon magic book that really dives into way more than I'm actually doing myself. But that's one that's a spiral book, and I do go back to it often. And right now I'm just reading the good old Lucas and the Bucklands, not Lucas and Llewellyn, that Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft.
Oh yeah, Big Blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing is huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's such an awkward shape.
It is. I'm kind of treating that almost like a workbook though. So I have it downloaded as an Audible, which I love doing. I love listening to books, but I'm going through it almost like a workbook and just really taking my time to dive into each little section. So I'm having fun with that right now.
Yeah, that's a good idea for that one. I think I always get asked how I like read so many things, or how I am reading so many different books at one time. And I'm like, but they're not the same like categories. Like there are witchcraft books that are like a fun read. They have like a little story to them and you can kind of read cover to cover. And then there's like ones you need to work through and you're studying, and that is a study book.
This one, yeah, it definitely is. And there are some. I was up in the mountains last week, and it was a long 7+ hour drive to get there. So I downloaded a book about Hecate, which was, I think, 14 hours. So it was perfect. I, listened to that on the way up and listened to that on the way down. And it's always interesting to hear whatever the topic is from the author's perspective. And, a lot of the times you're like, man, I am gelling with you. Like, I get you. This is everything you're saying. I totally believe and agree with. And then there's other books where, you start reading, you're like, okay, some of it, yes.
And I do want listeners to know that you have an episode on Hecate and specific office magic with Hecate, because I get questions about that all the time. And I don't do deity work, and I have never worked with Hecate. So I'm like, I can tell you what I have like read from books, but I have no personal experience. So I want everybody to know that you have an episode on that.
Well, guess what? I don't either. So I actually had to have a guest on that one.
Exactly. So there are experts out there that are not.
That's right.
But I'm definitely going to have that particular episode, like, because I've gotten so many questions about that lately.
Okay, right on.
If she's becoming more popular now, or something came up, but definitely a popular one.
It is, and she is for sure. And I do have a fun guest, and we have a lot of good banter on that episode. So it's a fun one to promote.
Love it. And also I just want to say that your like dedication, I know this is your list making coming through, but your dedication to having what's coming next on your podcast is amazing. Like you're like a month ahead of like, here are my next episodes. I'm like, you're beautiful. I love it.
There's that list for you, I'll tell you.
No, I love you. Be like, here are my next 4 episodes. I'm like, wow, you're brilliant.
Oh, you go, girl.
My thoughts exactly.
It's hard. It's making a podcast is it's a succubus of time, even if it's just a 30-minute episode. But I have it is. It is.
Oh, it's so accurate.
Oh, but I am truly getting so much joy out of making these episodes, and it's like you're getting a quick 30-minute snapshot of a journal that I'm making for myself, and all the little notes and tricks and tips that I'm doing that I'm looking to incorporate, I'm sharing with everybody else.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great to, share that. I think it helps you learn the information better too. When you have to present it to somebody else, that's always how I've learned as well. Like, do I know it well enough to teach it to somebody else?
That's right.
That is how I know I mastered a topic.
I did switch it up a little bit recently. I tried to actually write a poem at the end of each of my episodes. There have been a couple where I've actually grabbed a poem written by somebody else, and given them credit and stuff, but I have broken it out because I don't know if everybody really wants to listen to a poem I've written. So I do a quick little break in between the topic and moving into the poem at the end now, but it is kind of fun if you're into poetry.
I love that.
Yeah, I do something specific to the topic each time.
Oh, how fun. That's a great creativity in there.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, I wanted to thank you so much for chatting with me today. This was a lot of fun. Your crow timing could not have been more perfect. It's beautiful.
I cannot wait to hear that. That's going to be awesome.
And thank you for sharing your expertise and talking all about your podcast. I appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much.
And listeners, that is everything that I have for this week. I will have everything linked over at witchwednesdays.com so you can find and listen to this podcast from the beginning, because you just started in October. So not too many to catch up on.
Awesome.
And then people can start listening live. And that is everything for this week, listeners. I will see you next week.
Need even more? Subscribe to Patreon and YouTube for exclusive bonus content. Order a themed witchcraft box every month through Witch Wednesdays on Etsy. Be sure to follow on Instagram at Witch Wednesdays Podcast. Find all these links and more at witchwednesdays.com.